All right, now let's get analysis. We're now joined via Zoom by Professor Hartmut Winkler, Energy Analyst. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, there were no major revelations during de Ruyter's testimony at Scopa today, I would say. You know, most of it is already contained in that explosive TV interview he did recently. You know, today he's refused to provide the names of ministers, like we heard, believed to be involved in the alleged criminal activity. He also refused to identify those who provided him with the information regarding the allegations of the criminal activity at the power utility. I mean, the latter perhaps more understandable. But anything that has stood out for you, in today's appearance?
Yes, well, as you say, this hasn't done Andre de Ruyter any favors today. The public was certainly expecting a little bit more than he said. They were expecting, especially for facts that could be tested in that. And he was really just deferring everything to the Hawks, deferring everything to judicial processes and so on. I think what we also have to look at is that this morning a story broke on News 24 where that publications was casting serious aspersion on the whole investigation done, saying that they were presented with a lot of this stuff, presumably the same thing that Andre de Ruyter is at the moment referring to. And they just found that they did not want to publish the story. Now most news outlets, including this one, would have rushed to this sort of story and published it immediately. If they found that they didn't trust the sources entirely and they didn't things didn't completely make sense, and some of the conclusions arrived at weren't backed up by whatever evidence they had, then that's worrying. And I think that's really ultimately this whole episode may have done a lot of damage to the quest to get to the bottom of Eskom's corruption, which I have no doubt there is a lot of it. I'm sure at this moment we still only know the tip of the iceberg of what's really going on.
Yeah, and I want to discuss that.
I want to discuss that. Is right that there isn't.
I want to discuss this. So going back to to his testimony, I mean, he was asked why he did not follow up on the corruption investigations at Eskom with the police. He, in fact, says it was not his responsibility, but rather that of the police commissioner. I mean, what do you think of that? Of that response? Just considering, like you said, the large-scale corruption within the entity, which de Ruyter himself revealed to be costing the utility over R1 billion a month. And of course, as you say, those reports that are now coming out of, this dirty investigation or dossier, as it were.
Yes, well, if that's a situation, then you simply can't just go and do an interview and claim that you have all this evidence. Then you do exactly what he should have done at this earlier interview is made exactly the same point, saying that he believes he has found some evidence of possible corruption and so on, and that he's referred it to the right channels. But I think he just simply took it too far. And I think it's entirely possible that some of these things eventually will turn out to be true. But right now, if he can't back this up, and he certainly didn't do so today, it's not going to be viewed in a good light.
Now, Prof, in this 13-page affidavit he submitted to Scopa, de Ruyter speaks extensively, of course, of the involvement of organized crime cartels, especially coal-fired power stations. How widespread is this? And is this something that the new electricity minister, of course, with the help of the acting CEO, should now be focusing on, just considering the amount that have been coming out of Eskom's coffers?
Yes, well, I'm sure that many of the stories we're hearing, such that deliveries of coal have been compromised by mixing the high-quality coal with normal rocks, these are probably more than just an ordinary isolated incident. I think what we need is a specialized unit of the police to look at exactly those sort of stories. They need to be focused on this, and they can look at the whole question of now whether this is a whole coal mafia or whether there's a couple of individuals that are taking advantage of weaknesses in Eskom's system. But yes, it's ultimately costing the country quite a lot, as do similar incidents, for example, with Transnet and so on, that we've got to look after our infrastructure. Eskom is crucial, and these sort of things are happening. We need to do whatever we can to root it out. So I would be in favor of setting up a specialized police unit which looks at exactly those sort of matters and tries to go on those on a systematic basis. I don't think there's a sort of situation where you can just go to your police station down the road and expect that they're going to solve it.
I mean, just talking about these finances, it again raises just the concerns that we know of, the survival. What is at stake, in terms of the survival of Eskom? Despite that more than 250 billion rand debt relief, to Eskom that was announced by the finance minister earlier this year in his budget speech, it gave Eskom some relief, but the utility still needs to address other challenges outside of corruption, like high cost base, indebted municipalities, etc. To what extent do you then think that Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa's action plan will cover just some of these challenges?
It may cover some of them, but I think ultimately, I don't think an action plan which was put together after a couple of weeks is without consulting much more broadly than has been the case, is a way to go. I think we need a long-term electricity plan, and that's normally provided by the department of Minister Gwede Mantashe. And if that is going to be the responsibility of Minister Ramokgopa, then that needs to be spelled out very clearly. At the moment, there still seems to be this uncertainty about who actually needs to step up and get this new plan done. But yes, things in the energy space are changing all the time. There's new technological developments. There's factors which influence the cost of various technologies. All those need to be looked at holistically. Now, a couple of the things that Minister Ramokgopa said in his proposal certainly do make sense in that. But I just think that more is needed. You might be able to get a couple of low-hanging fruits that will slightly ease the situation, but what we're talking about is trying to eradicate the electricity crisis as a whole, and that is not a short-term thing. It's nothing that's going to be fixed this year. It's nothing that's probably going to be completely fixed in the next 5 years, but we need a real properly thought through and properly worked out plan that will take us to a much more secure energy future 5 years down the line. Until then, I'm afraid we're still going to have load shedding. Hopefully it won't in future be quite as bad as it's going to be this year, but things will take time to turn around.
I think that time is about 18 months, I believe. But Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Professor Hartmut Winkler, the energy analyst.